Most people think strength is what you show with your fists, but I say strength, true strength, is invisible. It's silent. It's in how you control your mind, not how loud you strike. You see a big man flex his muscles and you think he's powerful, but I tell you, that strength is an illusion. Real power is when you can bend without breaking, when you can flow without losing yourself. That's what I tried to warn the world about. Because if you chase the image of strength, you will miss the essence of it. Strength you can see is often the weakest kind, my friend. Muscles can be built, loudness can be faked, but these things are only on the surface, and the surface is not where real power lives. True strength is quiet. It doesn't show off. It doesn't need applause. It stands firm when no one is watching. You see, many people look strong on the outside, but collapse the moment life hits them in the heart. That is because their strength was decoration, not foundation. I learned that a man who controls his anger, who walks away from the fight when his ego says attack, is far stronger than the one who throws the first punch. The real power is in restraint. The real strength is in stillness. That kind of strength, you can't see it, but when you have it, you feel it in your bones. You ever notice how some people shout to prove a point or flex just to be seen? That's loud strength, the kind that needs attention to feel real. But real wisdom, real power is quiet. It doesn't need to perform. A wise man doesn't raise his voice, he raises his presence. I've seen fighters with big muscles get crushed by calm minds. Why? Because muscle can break, but wisdom bends. Muscle tires, but wisdom adapts. You can train your body for years and still be weak if your mind is undisciplined. So don't chase the noise. Don't try to prove yourself through power others can see. Instead, sharpen the blade within. Because true strength is when you carry storms in your mind, but still walk like the water is calm. Most people don't know what power really is. They see someone big, loud, aggressive, and they say, that's strength. But they've already been fooled. Power is not how hard you hit. It's how much you control yourself when you're being hit. By life, by emotions, by failure. Many chase the illusion of power because it looks shiny. They lift more, shout more, dominate more. But inside, they are shaken by small things. They cannot sit still. They cannot breathe in silence. That is not power. That is insecurity dressed as strength. Real power is quiet. It is presence. It is mastery over your own chaos. You cannot buy it, wear it, or fake it. You must become it. That's why I say, don't be fooled by the illusion. Instead, become the truth. Most people think strength is about mastering others, beating someone in a fight, winning an argument, controlling a room. But I say, the highest form of strength is mastering yourself. That means mastering your thoughts when they try to attack you, mastering your emotions when anger rises like fire, mastering your ego when it whispers, prove them wrong. True strength is when you can hear all that noise inside you and still choose peace. It's when you can walk away from a fight, not because you're weak, but because you are wise. You see, the world teaches you to conquer, but I say, first conquer yourself. The man who knows himself can never truly be defeated, even if he falls. Why? Because he is not ruled by fear, by pride, by outside noise. He acts. He does not react. He chooses. He does not chase. When I trained, I didn't just sharpen my fists. I sharpened my awareness, my patience, my control. That's the kind of power that lasts, because it comes from the inside. So ask yourself, can you sit in silence and still feel powerful? Can you be disrespected and still walk with dignity? If yes, then you are mastering yourself. And that is the greatest strength of all. You can force your way through life, or you can flow. Force is rigid. It breaks when pressure comes. Flow is flexible. It moves, adapts, survives. That's why I say, be like water. Water can crash, yes, but it can also slip through cracks, wear down stone, and move mountains without a sound. Force wants to prove something. Flow doesn't need to. Force demands. Flow understands. When people fight against the world, trying to control everything, they become tense, angry, tired. But the one who flows, who accepts change, who adjusts without losing himself, that one becomes powerful in silence. I saw many fighters fall not because they lacked strength, but because they tried to force every movement. Their mind was stiff, their emotions tight. But when you flow, you respond, not react. You adapt, not panic. You trust timing, you trust presence. That is true martial arts, and that is true life. Force is the weapon of the insecure. Flow is the way of the wise. So I ask you, are you trying to push life, or are you learning to move with it? The ocean never forces. It pulls, it rises, it retreats, and still it commands all things. Be like that. Be like water, because flow always outlasts force. People think strength is about holding on to pride, to pain, to people, to the past. But I tell you this, it takes far more power to let go. Why? Because letting go requires trust. It demands awareness. It takes a quiet courage that forceful men never learn. Holding on is easy when your ego is involved. You tell yourself, I can't lose this. I can't let them go. I must prove something. But you don't see that grip is what's keeping you stuck. It's making you heavy, and a heavy soul cannot move forward. When I let go of everything I was told to be, I became who I truly was. I stopped trying to impress. I stopped trying to fit. I stopped trying to win battles that weren't mine. And in doing so, I found real peace. I became light, and only when you are light, like water, like wind, can you be powerful without being loud. Letting go doesn't mean weakness. It means you are wise enough to know what no longer serves your spirit. You are strong enough to walk away, even when your emotions beg you to stay. The warrior who can walk away with calm in his heart is stronger than the one who stays out of fear. So I say, if something is holding you down, don't tighten your grip. Loosen it, release it. You do not need to carry what was never yours to hold. True strength is in freedom, and freedom begins when you let go. Too many people try to be unbreakable, hard, cold, untouchable. But I tell you, even the hardest rock can be shattered with the right pressure. Unbreakable is not the goal. Be unshakable. A tree that cannot bend will snap in the storm, but a bamboo sways and survives. Strength is not in how stiff you are. It's in how centered you remain, even when the world moves around you. When someone insults you, can you stay still inside? When life doesn't go your way, can you breathe instead of panic? That's what I mean by unshakable. It's not about being perfect or emotionless. It's about staying rooted in your truth when everything else tries to pull you out of it. The unshakable man is calm under fire, steady in chaos, and silent in noise. He doesn't need to prove himself because his spirit already knows who he is. I trained my body for speed and power, but more than that, I trained my mind not to be moved by every opinion, not to be ruled by every emotion, because if your mind is shaken every time someone disrespects you, you're still in chains. Real freedom, real strength is when nothing from the outside can disturb your peace inside. So don't try to be made of stone. Be like the mountain, firm, grounded, but still connected to the sky. That way, no matter what storm comes, you remain. You don't break. You don't even shake. You simply stand and breathe. Most people spend their lives trying to look strong. They puff their chest. They speak louder. They walk like warriors, but fall at the slightest challenge. Why? Because they confuse the image of strength with the substance of it. And I tell you, the image fades, the illusion breaks, but true strength flows like water, and water never lies. I've seen it time and time again. Men who trained for years to look powerful, fighters who could break bricks, scream like lions. But when their hearts were tested, when life gave them pain, silence, betrayal, they shattered because their strength was not inside them. It was a performance, a costume, a wall. But real strength, my friend, is quiet. It's deep. It's invisible to most, but unshakable within. I learned this in solitude, not in front of crowds, not in fights, but in still moments, sitting with my own thoughts. Water doesn't boast, it doesn't yell, but it can carve through rock. It can flow around any obstacle. It can drown fire, fill space, and create life. That's why I always say, be like water. To be like water is to be free. Free from fixed form. Free from needing to be seen, admired, or feared. When you are like water, you don't chase, you attract. You don't force, you flow. You don't break, you bend. And even when you fall, you do so with grace. The weak seek control, the wise seek alignment. Most are trapped by the need to look powerful. But if you always need to prove your strength, then you are still owned by your ego. And the ego is never satisfied. It will turn every moment into a performance, every failure into a threat, every silence into discomfort. But water doesn't care who watches. Water just moves. To be like water is to master both peace and pressure. It means you don't need to respond to everything. You choose when to rise. You choose when to retreat. You are not afraid of stillness because you know stillness is strength. The ocean looks calm, but it holds the power to move the earth. So too must you build your power silently beneath the surface where no one sees, but you know it's there. True strength is being empty of ego, but full of purpose. There were times when I was misunderstood. People wanted me to be something else, more violent, more arrogant, but I refused. Because strength isn't how loud you are. It's how deeply you believe in your way. And I believed in being like water. I believed that softness can overcome hardness, that flexibility is stronger than resistance, and that self-mastery is more powerful than control over others. When someone offends you, you don't need to react. That's being like water. When life breaks your plan, you don't need to break with it. That's being like water. When the world becomes loud, you stay silent inside. That's being like water, and slowly you realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're becoming. Becoming something few will understand, but many will feel. You're not just powerful, you're grounded. You're not just disciplined, you're flowing. You're not just calm, you're invincible. You are no longer a rock that cracks under pressure. You are the water that surrounds it, soft but eternal. People ask me, Bruce, how can I be strong like you? And I say, but don't try to be like me, be like water. I had to break many things in myself before I became who I was. I had to break pride, break fear, break the need for applause. Only then did I realize strength is not something you show, it's something you carry. Carry your pain, but don't be owned by it. Carry your discipline, but don't wear it as pride. Carry your silence, but let it speak when the moment calls. And above all, carry your truth, because that is the only strength the world can never take from you. So stop trying to look strong. Start living like water. Be light in form, but deep in purpose. Be humble in appearance, but unshakable in values. Be soft to the world, but strong with yourself, because when you are like water, nothing can hold you, and nothing can break you. And that is the final lesson I offer you. To become who you truly are, you must let go of who you were trained to be. People often wonder why they feel stuck, why despite their hard work, discipline, and effort, something inside them still feels caged. And I tell them, it's because you are trying to carry your old self into your new path. But the version of you that is trying to be born cannot survive in the same environment, the same mindset, the same routine that shaped your past. you are still holding on to stories, to identities, to roles, to wounds, and you don't see that those things no longer belong to the person you are becoming. You cannot evolve and stay the same. You cannot awaken and still cling to the illusion. You cannot fly while dragging the chains of your past. To transform, you must shed. Like water, you must change shape to flow into new places.
When I trained, I didn't just train my body. I trained to unlearn, to release false strength, to break the illusion that I had to prove something to others in order to feel like someone. The more I let go, the more I became. The more I dropped the masks, the more I found my real face. But this is painful, because the identity you built feels safe. The habits you've kept feel familiar. But comfort is the cage, and the door to freedom only opens when you're willing to walk away from the life that numbs your spirit.
You cannot serve your purpose while trying to please your past. You cannot walk a new path if you're still bowing to old noise. Most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of letting go of what made them feel safe. I see many people chasing change, chasing greatness, chasing strength, but they refuse to release their attachment to smallness. They keep returning to people, places, and patterns that comfort their ego but kill their growth. They want success, but they fear isolation. They want peace, but they won't release the toxic habits that bring chaos. They want power, but they're still addicted to validation, and so they stay stuck, like water trapped in a closed jar full of potential but unable to move. To flow, you must open. To open, you must release. And to release, you must trust. The new version of you is asking to be born, but the old version keeps holding the pen. How can you write a new chapter when your hands are still gripping the old one? You say you want transformation, but are you willing to face the fire that melts who you were? Are you willing to walk alone so that you can finally walk free? Are you willing to be misunderstood so you can be honest? These are not easy things, but nothing true ever is. Let me tell you, the hardest part of growth is not what you gain. It's what you must leave behind. You will have to leave behind the version of you that needed approval. You will have to leave behind the version of you that always played it safe. You will have to leave behind the version of you that settled for good enough. You will have to leave behind the version of you that stayed silent just to be liked. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be free. And freedom has a price. The price is shedding the skin that no longer fits. It is walking through the desert before reaching the garden. It is being willing to lose what was never real in order to gain what is eternal. And yes, it will hurt. But that pain, that's the stretching of your soul, making room for the version of you that can breathe at last. When I became Bruce Lee, I had to kill every false version of myself along the way. The version that was scared of rejection, the version that wanted to impress others, the version that doubted his own voice. I had to bury them all, not with anger, but with love, because they were no longer me. They were just echoes of who I thought I needed to be to survive. But I wasn't born to survive. I was born to live fully, freely, fiercely. The life you want exists on the other side of who you refuse to stop being. What are you still holding on to that's blocking your growth? What old story do you repeat that's keeping you small? What comfort are you clinging to that's killing your potential? Sometimes the most courageous act is not to fight, but to walk away, to say, I'm no longer available for the version of me that keeps myself small. That's strength. That's clarity. That's the moment you stop performing, done, and start becoming. You do not need to add more. You need to remove what is not you. People think transformation is about building more muscle, learning more techniques, stacking more trophies. Real transformation is about subtraction. cutting away everything that is not aligned with your soul. It is about clearing space, releasing the noise, simplifying until only truth remains, and from that truth your real power rises. Don't fear this process. Embrace it, because the version of you that emerges on the other side is unstoppable. The version of you that doesn't need validation, the version of you that doesn't fear silence, the version of you that doesn't chase but magnetizes, the version of you that doesn't just look strong but is strong, calm, clear, centered like water. There is a version of you waiting, one that doesn't just perform strength but lives it. But you can't drag your old self into that future. The life you are clinging to was built by a version of you that didn't know what you know now. That version built survival habits. That version chose comfort over clarity. That version stayed in circles that kept them small. But you are awakening. You are no longer satisfied with pretending. You are no longer interested in shallow wins. You want depth. You want truth. You want peace that doesn't depend on others. And that means you must rise. Not by climbing, but by shedding. When you stop needing to be who you were, you become who you are. That is the final evolution, and that version of you, it cannot live in the house of old habits. It cannot breathe in the air of fear. It cannot grow in the soil of ego. It needs new space. Space you must create by letting go of the old. Relationships, beliefs, routines, thoughts. Clear them. Create a new atmosphere, one that reflects who you are becoming. And once you do, you will no longer feel heavy. You will no longer feel stuck. You will no longer feel torn between the past and the future. You will simply be still, grounded, powerful, like water. So I tell you this as your teacher, your mirror, your fellow traveler, let go. Not in fear, not in rage, but in honor of who you are called to become. The version of you that's trying to rise cannot breathe in the life you're still trying to save. You are not that old story anymore. You are not the mistake. You are not the fear. You are not the performance. You are becoming something truer, something deeper, something freer. And when you finally step into that, you will no longer need to look strong. You will be like water, unshakable, unbreakable, unstoppable. You see, most people are afraid of stillness. They think if they're not doing something, they're falling behind. They believe if they're not moving, achieving, performing, then they are losing. But I tell you the truth, the most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest one, not the one showing off his strength, not the one trying to dominate the space. It is the one sitting silently, observing everything, moving only when it is time. That is stillness, not laziness, not passivity, but deep awareness, sharp focus, inner power. Stillness is not weakness. It is the sharpening of your sword before the fight. It is the building of your fortress before the storm. It is the alignment of your spirit before the next rise. When you learn to sit with stillness, you discover something most people never will, that your greatest enemy was never out there. It was always the chaos within. And when you learn to still that chaos, you become unstoppable. Stillness is where the real war is fought, and the real warrior is the one who conquers himself. Do not be fooled by the world's noise. They tell you to hustle, to grind, to always be seen. But I say, what is the point of movement if you do not know where you are going? What is the point of running if you are just escaping yourself? The world wants you busy, distracted, restless, because a man who is always moving never has time to wake up. But in stillness, you begin to see. You see who you truly are. You see what you've been avoiding. You see what's real and what's noise. And slowly, the false layers begin to fall. The mask cracks. The tension releases. And you realize you don't need to be more. You just need to be true. That truth is found in stillness. Not in crowds, not in applause, not in achievement, in stillness. Because stillness does not lie. Stillness reveals. The man who fears stillness fears meeting his own soul. I remember in my training, I would spend hours alone, not just training my kicks, my punches, my techniques, but sitting with my mind, watching it, studying it. And I realized most people don't fear the outside world, they fear the silence, because in silence you can hear the voice you've been ignoring, and that voice, it tells the truth. It tells you what needs to change. It tells you what you've been clinging to. It tells you who you really are. And that truth can be frightening because it demands transformation. But without stillness, there is no clarity. Without clarity, there is no power. And without power, there is no freedom. Stillness is not a pause from the journey. It is the heart of the journey. The strongest warriors are not the ones who swing first. They are the ones who wait, who breathe, who observe. When I entered the ring, I never fought with panic. I never attacked just to prove something. I studied. I read the body. I felt the energy. And I only struck when it was time. That precision, that timing came from stillness, not hesitation, but alignment. Stillness gives you vision. It allows you to move from the center, not from fear, not from reaction, but from control. And that is where the strongest warriors are forged, not in noise, not in war, but in the quiet moments when they choose clarity over chaos. So I ask you, can you sit with yourself? Can you breathe without distraction? Can you hold your ground in silence? If you can, you are training to master the greatest battlefield, the one within. Do not mistake movement for progress. True growth happens in stillness. You don't grow just because you're busy. You don't evolve just because you're moving. Many people run their entire lives but never arrive. They climb but never feel fulfilled. They chase but never find peace. Why? Because they never stop, they never sit, they never face what needs to be seen. Stillness is where wounds are healed. Stillness is where fears are dissolved. Stillness is where you stop pretending and start remembering who you are. And that's when transformation begins. In stillness, you return to your power. You return to your truth. You return to your freedom. Everything in the world is pulling you outward, the phone, the media, the expectations, the fear of missing out. But true warriors, they pull inward, they return to the source, because they know that everything they need is already within. The confidence, the clarity, the strength, it's already there, but it's covered by noise. And noise cannot be removed by more noise. It must be dissolved in stillness. Sit with yourself, ask nothing, want nothing, just be, and watch slowly. Your power will rise from within. Not the power to control others, but the power to control yourself, to command your focus, to master your emotions, to move with intention. That is real power, and it is born in stillness. Water is calm on the surface, but holds storms in its depth. So should you. I learned everything I know from nature, and nature moves from stillness. The mountain does not speak, but it teaches. The ocean does not shout, but it transforms. The wind does not fight, but it moves everything in its path. Stillness is not weakness, it is power in its purest form. The calm fighter is the most dangerous. The quiet man is the one to watch, because he is not driven by the world, he is driven by purpose. Become that man, become that force, not through noise, but through stillness. If you can master stillness, no storm can master you. The world will test you. People will betray you. Life will shake you. But if you are grounded in stillness, you will not fall, because your roots go deeper than the storm, and your strength comes from a place the world cannot touch. You won't need to prove anything, and you won't need to fight every battle. You will choose your movements. You will trust your timing. You will flow like water, with depth, with purpose, with peace, and that is the way of the warrior. Stillness is not a retreat. It is a return to the self. So when you feel lost, don't run, be still. When you feel broken, don't escape, be still. When the world is too loud, don't shout back, be still, because stillness will show you what action cannot. It will guide you where maps cannot. It will awaken you in ways no teacher can. Everything I am came from stillness. Not from fame, not from strength, not from victory, but from listening, from watching, from waiting, from breathing. Stillness is where you stop searching and start becoming. So I ask you, my friend, can you sit with your truth? Can you move only when it matters? Can you walk through the fire without rushing, without fear? That is strength. That is mastery. That is the spirit of the warrior. And it begins not with action, but with stillness. Be like water. Be like the mountain. Calm, deep, rooted, and unshakable. Most people think strength is what you show with your fists, but I say strength. True strength is invisible. It's silent. It's in how you control your mind, not how loud you strike. You see a big man flex his muscles and you think he's powerful, but I tell you, that strength is an illusion. Real power is when you can bend without breaking, when you can flow without losing yourself. That's what I tried to warn the world about. Because if you chase the image of strength, you will miss the essence of it.